Hello and welcome to the PardewRaids.com raid guide. I am Pardew and I'll be talking you through the 25-man Amber Shaper Unsock encounter. Amber Shaper is the 5th encounter in the Heart of Fear raid and is a 3-phase fight which revolves around individuals controlling a vehicle. For now, let's start with the Phase 1 mechanics. During Phase 1, the boss will have a few key abilities. First, the boss will use Amber Scalpel. This creates an orange beam that leaves residue on the ground, so players will want to kite away from others, while not getting hit themselves. The boss will also create 4 living amber adds. These will target random players and melee attack until they are killed. While alive, they each deal a small amount of raid-wide damage, so ranged players should be killing these adds throughout the fight. When killed, they drop a burning amber on the ground. This will damage players and can be used later in the fight to sustain the constructs. Because of Burning Amber's usefulness, we kill the adds near the center of the room. The healers will also need to be aware of an ability called Parasitic Growth. This is a debuff that does damage over time, but increases with each heal that the player takes. 1 or 2 healers can be assigned to the growth player, and no other healers should cast direct heals on that player. All healing can increase the dot damage, so later in the fight you may need the growth player to get away from AoE heals or use defensive cooldowns. Paladins should use Hand of Purity on the player with the debuff timer at 7 seconds remaining in order to ease the healing requirements. 2 paladins using Chain Hand of Purity from 12 to 0 seconds trivializes this mechanic completely. The final mechanic of Phase 1 is Reshape Life. The boss will choose his current main target and turn them into a mutated construct. Players who control the construct need to remain aware of 3 things. First is their power bar. If that reaches 0, the player will die and the construct will freely cast Amber Explosion, likely wiping the raid. If the power bar is about to expire and the player cannot leave their construct, they need to consume the burning amber pools on the ground to recover power. This also heals the construct for 20% of its health, which is a bad thing, so this should only happen in Phase 3. The next thing the construct player must worry about is Amber Explosion. Both the boss and the add cast this, so the player must interrupt both, or else the raid will take a massive hit. The 1 ability interrupts the boss and places a debuff on him, making him take more damage. The 2 ability interrupts the construct's Amber Explosion. It is key to the fight that players interrupt themselves to avoid the extra raid damage. The only way to exit the construct is to use the 4 ability. This can only be used when the construct is at 20% health, so the raid will need to switch to the construct and damage it under 20% promptly. Phase 2 begins when the boss reaches 70% health. He will summon an add called Amber Monstrosity and take 99% reduced damage. Raid DPS should switch to the Monstrosity. During this phase, the boss will begin choosing random players to turn into mutated constructs. As in Phase 1, the constructs will need to be DPS'd down to 20%. This is top priority, so players need to switch to ensure that players do not die while in the construct. Ranged DPS will also need to continue killing the living Ember adds. The key abilities in this phase are the Amber Explosions. Construct players will need to be consistently interrupting both the boss and their own Amber Explosion. Remember, the 1 ability is interrupt on the boss, the 2 ability is interrupt yourself. The boss will also cast Massive Stomp, damaging everyone within 15 yards. Range and healers should ensure they are standing far enough out, and melee can soak the damage. Once the monstrosity is dead, Phase 3 will begin. During Phase 3, the boss will cast Reshape Life much more frequently. He will no longer cast Amber Scalpel, so the raid can stack up and focus fire the boss. Players who are controlled will need to interrupt themselves and use the 1 ability to stack up as many stacks on the boss as possible. It should be noted that it is possible to maintain and build stacks on the boss in Phase 2, so that the boss has very high stacks of debuff at the beginning of Phase 3. This takes coordination and awareness on the part of the player in the construct, and they will need to remain alive throughout Phase 2. Phase 3 becomes a burn phase since more players will begin getting controlled. There will also be a lot of raid damage, so players in constructs need to ensure that Amber Explosion is not cast. Overall, this is a fun fight within the Heart of Fear raid. The main concern is players interrupting Amber Explosions. Once a raid has that down, they should have a kill. If no Amber Explosions are going off and you are still struggling, then you'll want to review your strategy to work in more damage debuffs on the boss. That will make Phase 3 very short and enhance your DPS significantly. Thank you for tuning in to another raid guide by ParduRaids.com. I hope this guide has been helpful for your guild and your progression. Feel free to check out other resources provided at my site and to leave questions and comments. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel or follow me on Twitter at ParduRaids for more information on the most recent updates to my site and videos. Also, don't forget to stay involved for your chance to win monthly prizes, including the coveted Razor Rating peripherals. Complete details can be found at ParduRaids.com under the prize giveaway section.